It was the great festival of Passover, and all the villages and roads near Jerusalem were bustling with groups of people making their way to the holy city for this annual celebration of God's salvation. Among the pilgrims were Jesus of Nazareth and his disciples. Ahead of their steps raced sensational stories of miracles and signs, like sight given to a blind man who called Jesus Son of David, a title given to the King of Israel. So, by the time they reached the gates of Jerusalem, the crowds were buzzing with eager questions. Could this man, Jesus of Nazareth, actually be the new David, their long-awaited Savior? Long before, the prophet Zechariah said that the Messiah would one day ride into the holy city from the Mount of Olives on a young donkey, a privilege reserved for the king during the festival. Other scriptures describe joyful crowds welcoming royal processions by waving palm branches and shouting verses of the Psalms. Speculation reached fever pitch that Sunday, the day of the week recalling the first day of creation, when the crowds witnessed Jesus coming across the bridge from Mount Olivet riding on an unbroken colt, a sign of his mastery over nature, like the new Adam whose coming was foretold. Excitedly, they pulled the cloaks off their backs to lay under his feet. They pulled branches from the trees to wave above his head, and they cried out snatches of David's song to welcome a ruler. Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord. Glory in the highest. And so they proclaimed the prophecy they themselves would fulfill 5 days later. Because you see, the psalm on their lips that day was not meant to accompany a king to a throne room in the palace, but a priest to the altar of sacrifice in the temple. This Jesus, this Son of David, did not come to rule in majesty on the cushions of a golden throne, but to sacrifice himself in humility on the altar of a rugged cross. He would not be the King of glory people desired and leaders feared, but the man of sorrows described by Isaiah, who would give his back to those who beat him and his cheeks to those who plucked his beard, who would not shield his face from the buffets and spitting of the very same people who welcomed him and sang his praises that day. My friends, now begins our journey with Christ through the last days of his life, which are, in fact, the reason for his incarnation and birth. The fulfillment of all of God's prophecies and promises. Today, let us open our hearts to walk with Jesus through the busy streets of Jerusalem and share the crowd's excitement and anticipation. On Thursday, let us sit with Jesus and the apostles in the upper room and receive him in the Eucharist as if for the very first time. And then let us stay awake with him in the Garden of Olives to comfort him in his sorrow. On Friday, let us mount the cross with Christ to give our lives to him as he gives his life to us, so that on Sunday morning, Easter morning, we who have died with Christ will rise with him from darkness into light, from death into new life. My friends, let us share his passion so that we may share his resurrection. For truly, without the cross, there is no crown.